To the heat, we're discussing the instability and chaos in Yemen and the battle for control of the government. Joining us is Sanaa Al-Hamdani. She's an independent writer and commentator on Yemeni political affairs. Also with us in our Washington, D.C. studio is Ali Abbas Al-Ahmed. He's a Saudi Arabian scholar and the founder and director of the Institute for Gulf Affairs. And we're also joined by Jamal Abdi. He is the policy director of the National Iranian-American Council. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Sanaa, let me start with you. What is going on in Yemen right now, and what is your assessment of the humanitarian situation there?
A lot is going on in Yemen right now. So the capital, Sanaa, is being targeted by airstrikes that are led by Saudi Arabia plus 9 other countries from the Gulf states mostly. Aden has a lot of killing between Yemeni forces. The Houthi militia that the Saudis are trying to eliminate are actually based, now are moving towards Aden and are fighting there with people on the street. Their enemies are southern civilians and also Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. What we see in the north of Yemen is a complete destruction of the military infrastructure of Yemen, not just the Houthi militia. The Houthi militia is a militia. As we know, you do not destroy militia by destroying military bases. And so all the airports that are international are completely destroyed. Everybody inside of Yemen is on lockdown for the time being. Lately, there have been a lot of targets that don't make sense, like factories, cement factories, dairy factories. When it comes to the humanitarian crisis, of course, it's getting worse. All the shipments to Yemen have been blocked. Yemen has been declared a no-fly zone. And so the humanitarian aid is not getting to the people. And even if some of it gets in, it's not the amount that we need to. A lot of Yemenis are hooked onto this humanitarian aid. They cannot survive without it. But it's important to note that right now we have a unique situation where several Yemenis are stuck at airports worldwide, and they cannot get entry visas to the countries that they're stuck at because the majority of the world has made huge visa restrictions for Yemenis. And so they're stuck at the airport now for 6 days without anywhere to go to. And Egypt, one of the countries that did not have visas for Yemenis, decided to enforce a visa at this time being. And so it seems really sad and tragic for these people that are stuck abroad, can't go anywhere.
Okay, Ali, what is the Saudi Arabian objective in Yemen?
This is bullying, right? Imagine in school, 10 kids taken on the smallest kid, the poorest kid. This is exactly what the Saudi are doing. This is Saudi policy of bullying its neighbor into submission, its submission to its policies. Yemen has been dictated by Saudi policy since 1978 after the assassination and murder of the popular President Ibrahim Al-Hamdani by Saudi support. In 2000, this Arab Spring brought a change to that, where Ali Abdullah Saleh, their stooge for many years, was dislodged. And instead of supporting that, the Saudis tried to divert that by putting his deputy, Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi, through the GCC initiative in place. And they continued to do that until the people of Yemen decided this is not so, that's not going to happen. Really what you see here is a second revolution. People say about the Houthis, I think it's pejorative to say that because you're not talking about a small group. Houthi is a name of a family. This is not the name of the group. This is called Ansarullah, and they have other people who support them. So this is a movement, that's a social movement that is Yemeni, that is aiming in empowering itself and its goals through Yemeni facilities. It's not through an invasion and bombing by other countries. And this war is not a war on the so-called Houthis. This is a war at Yemen. That's why Sanaa airport, dairy factories were targeted deliberately by the Saudi forces.
Very quickly, Ali, is the intention to restore President Hadi?
Yes, but it's not going to happen. This is unrealistic.
Okay, Jamal, Iran's former president Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani described the Saudi bombing, that campaign, as what he called a dangerous mistake. His words were, they have started playing with fire. Is that a warning in some way that this conflict could get much more serious, far bigger?
Well, sure. I think it's a warning. I wouldn't say it's a threat. I think that the Iranian role in Yemen has been overstated. I think it has, in large part, been a bit of a smokescreen to give credence to these strikes and trying to unite some of the countries around these strikes. But this notion that Iran is establishing another, Shia country in Yemen, I think is completely overblown, and all the evidence really does point to that. There is, Iranian rhetorical support. There have been some limited actual documented instances of Iranian direct support. But in reality, this is something that is happening within the country and is not going to be determined by Iran's role in it.
Right, it's very hard to get a clear assessment of how big a role Iran has or how big a role the Saudi Arabians have in this. Sanaa, let's listen to what the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States, Adel Al-Jubeir, had to say on the U.S. television program Meet the Press when he was asked if Yemen has become a battleground, in effect, for a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Let's watch this.
This is a war to protect the people of Yemen and defend its legitimate government from a group that is allied and supported by Iran and Hezbollah. But I wouldn't call it a proxy war because we are doing this to protect Yemen.
So, is it a proxy war or is he right?
Well, this is a very complicated issue. First of all, President Hadi issued an official request asking for the GCC and other countries to intervene. So in essence, they are responding to an official request made by Yemen's president. The problem with this request is that the President Hadi does not have popular support in Yemen. He's lost a lot of his support and has decided not to speak to people on several occasions. The Houthi militia group saying that they have expanded very quickly from the north, from Sanaa to other parts of Yemen, and have been pushing towards Aden. And they have committed a lot of crimes and have persecuted protesters and so on and so forth. However, this is, again, a matter that needed to be curbed. You know, something to ask is, why did President Hadi stand back and allow them to control all of the north before he decided to ask for help or do anything? Yemenis have short memories, and not just Yemenis. I think anybody who watches the news has short memories, and they forget that President Hadi himself allowed the Houthis to expand at first and only took a position against them when he realized that they're going to ally themselves with former President Saleh rather than with him. And so the problem with Yemen is we have 5 leaders that are the reason why Yemen is in this disaster. And the majority of the population is actually just sitting home, feeling helpless, scared of the politics of dying here.
Ali, we heard the ambassador say that we are in Yemen to protect the Yemeni people. What do you make of that?
I think this is really false. You don't bomb a country at the request of one of its political leaders. Let's make sure to clarify this. Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi is not the president of Yemen. He's president of Yemen in the media, but if you look at the GCC initiative, which was enforced by Ali Abdullah Saleh and the Saudi government, it says Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi term expired in February 22nd, 2014. He is no longer the president of Yemen, so he has no legitimate or legal right to request any help from anybody militarily. So this is a legal war from that standpoint. It's illegal also to shut down, to close the air force or the air, the space of another country, which the Saudis are doing. Yesterday they blocked the International Red Cross from delivering aid, medical aid to Yemen, and stopped the plane from landing in Sanaa airport. That really, this issue is not about Ansarullah or the fight. This is a Yemeni fight, and everybody committed a lot of crimes against each other. But this is a Yemeni problem that should have been dissolved through dialogue, not through bombing. This war is not going to end well for Saudis, especially. Obviously, the Yemenis are suffering the most, but Saudis also will end up paying for it.
Okay, Jamal, we now have Pakistan saying that it is considering sending troops to join this coalition against Yemen. Arab leaders meeting in Egypt have also talked about creating a pan-Arab force to take on groups that they want to well, they say, prevent other conflicts in that region. How is Iran going to respond to that?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. There is a growing deficit of diplomacy in the region. There is clearly a vacuum that has led to this instability, a vacuum of whatever you want to call it, a vacuum of leadership, the fact that the United States is trying to leave the region and not have a continual occupying force there. And while I don't think this is a proxy war, I think that this situation is one that we do see in other areas in the region where the Saudis are seeking to assert themselves. And you do have this coalition that's being built largely around this notion that there is a vacuum that these countries need to fill to balance against the Iranian side of things. And so I think that really the most promising, the only promising thing that we have happening right now is this dialogue between the United States and Iran that hopefully can lead to dialogue between Iran and the Saudis, dialogue within the region to start addressing the fundamental issue at play here. Outside of, I mean, there are obviously internal dynamics that are happening inside of Yemen, but the fundamental issue is that there's a standoff and there is a broader proxy war in the region that could quickly lead to something much worse.
But of course, we have this very confusing picture now of the United States trying to come to a nuclear deal with Iran on the one hand. On the other hand, it is the two sides on either side of the battle going on in Yemen.
Right. Well, look, the nuclear deal doesn't mean the United States is rebalancing its alliances. This is potentially a gateway to moving towards a new paradigm. But look, the United States is also reassuring its allies that it's not leaving their side. And I think that's what a lot of this is about. It's more rhetorical support than actual direct support.
Okay, Ali, there was a scholar, is a scholar rather, at the Brookings Institution right here in Washington, Ken Pollack, who writes extensively about Middle Eastern affairs. He had this to say about the conflict. He said, Saudi Arabia's intervention in Yemen is ill-conceived and very likely to seriously weaken the already fragile Saudi monarchy. Is he overstating the case, or?
I think there's a bit of overstating, but I think this is also a real issue here, that Yemen, the population, the result of this war, you're going to have maybe millions of Yemenis moving up north into Saudi territory. What if the rebels, the Yemenis now, you cannot even call them rebels anymore, because what if the Yemeni fighters take part of Saudi Arabia or large part of southern Saudi Arabia? They have done that in 2009 when it was Houthis. Only a few hundred people with very little weapons. Now they are much more equipped. There's about 100,000 fighters who are in part supported, got support from Iran and got support from Qatar as well in the past. So what if they take part Saudi territories, then what? And it will fragment the Saudi ruling monarchy, because some will take advantage of Saudi failures into Yemen to struggle to gain power, and I think it will affect them from that side. That's, I think, the greatest threat to Saudi Arabia. Their failure, which I see coming, will lead to a fragmentation of the Saudi ruling family. We have seen Saudi attempts in the past to go to war fail. The Saudis, army have never won a war, and every time they have a problem, they ask for help. American help, and now Pakistani help, and Egyptian help, and other help. So they are not up for war. The Saudis have never won a war, and any war that they entered in.
All right, Sanaa, earlier on you painted this very harrowing picture of what's going on in Yemen right now. Is there a danger that Yemen could become a failed state, could become a haven for terrorism?
Yemen is a failed state. The problem right now is that the Houthi militia group, as dangerous and as terrorizing they were to some parts of Yemen, they were the only group that were capable of fighting and combating Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Yemen's military has been infiltrated by that group, and the majority of the soldiers have been terrified by them and assassinated and targeted by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And so by weakening the Houthi militia group, there's a risk that we are opening Yemen's grounds for Al-Qaeda. And now we have ISIS, which is even worse, because they've been bombing mosques and killing people indiscriminately. And so it seems that after the strike, if there isn't a clear plan on what to do, Yemen is going to fall apart. And bringing President Hadi back to Yemen is not going to work. That means, and I'm sure the Saudis are already planning for this, they're going to have to find another ally in Yemen, and it's not going to be Hadi. This could potentially mean that they're going to have to befriend the Muslim Brotherhood again, and probably put them back on Yemeni politics. Having said that, on the subject of saving Yemen, I think that the GCC countries that are so eager to help Yemen at this time being should open their doors for Yemeni immigrants and refugees, because the only country that is accepting Yemeni refugees at the moment is Somalia. So imagine that, Somalia is the only country that's doing that. And on the subject of nuclear deals, some people view that this war is probably a way to try and distract Iran and drag it into Yemeni soil to kind of ruin or spoil the nuclear talks. And so in that regard, anybody who allied themselves with Iran in Yemen is a sore loser at the moment, because they probably would have wanted Iran to come and get involved.
Okay, let me get Jamal's quick take on that. Is this pushback against the nuclear deal?
I think in some regards, it's a little bit of that. I think it's a response to this potentially changing dynamic, and there's a lot of insecurity among the Saudis, which is why, as I said, I think the United States is trying to demonstrate that, look, we're still your allies, even as this deal is being brokered by, with Iran. But I do think, if you get a deal that is a potential game changer, that down the road starts to usher in a new paradigm and new opportunities to actually dialogue. And I think the status quo powers in the region are very worried about that.
Ali, how deeply is the United States involved here? The Guardian newspaper telling us that the U.S. is providing, quote, unquote, logistical and intelligence support.
The U.S. government knew about this invasion, about this attack, before it started. They did not know the exact hour, yes, but that's not a consideration. But they knew about this ahead of time. They supported it, and it shows you how U.S. policy is not only a failed policy, but it is disjointed. At the same time, they say that they want to attack and destroy Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the most dangerous terrorist group to the United States territory. They are providing support to the air force of Al-Qaeda. Now the Saudi and its allies, their air force are acting as really, in fact, the air force for Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Yemen, because they are targeting the same people who have defeated ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Yemen, which are the Yemeni rebels, Ansarullah, and those Yemeni forces that joined them. They have been the best in rooting out Al-Qaeda and killing them and taking territories from them. No one else has been able to do that.
Clearly a very complex situation. Thanks to all of you for joining us here.